All right. So this is our check-in for week 4 already, I think, of the 2025 Tufts Capstone project. I know you all have done some exciting stuff since we last spoke with user research. So as far as I know, that's the only thing on our agenda for today. So I'll turn it over to you. We can talk a bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, so we have conducted two interviews last week, and we have one more coming up tomorrow. They're all internal GitLab users. So we're still waiting for the screener for the recruiting for the external GitLab users for next week. In terms of the research deliverable, we have the deliverable due Monday. So we have want to try kind of get the overall learning like for now for Monday with all of our like how might we's and competitive analysis and kind of preliminary research, and then we will continue our interview until I think like the end of next week.
Cool. Um, I left you a little bit of async feedback in the Slack channel. I watched the recordings of your two interviews you've done so far. I thought you did a great job. I think you were doing some really good active listening. You were doing a great job of like keeping the flow of the conversation going, kind of diving in on things that seemed interesting that they brought up that weren't necessarily in your script, but were relevant to what you're looking for. It's good. I don't think I have any constructive feedback.
No, yeah, it was very interesting, especially with the second one. I know we noticed that it was more diving into kind of the authoring process almost, which I remember like initially when I realized that's kind of like the direction we were going into, I was like, oh, I don't know if I should ask to instead walk us through, like something to Alyssa in terms of what it looks like for Austin to become familiarized with an already written one. But I kind of was like figuring that almost any information right now is good information, which I was like, I was also going to ask too, like maybe to what extent does that hold true for you guys when you start off your research? Because I was like, in my head, like any information is good information because we don't know too much, but also don't want to kind of use up time on unnecessary, inf or topics, I guess. But yeah, I was wondering if you guys had any like intel or insights on that.
I mean, I think that your head's in the right place about the balance, right? Like you want to make sure that you're using the time effectively and getting information that's going to help further your project and like help you understand what you need to understand. But you're also right that like at this, it's important to have an awareness that at this stage in the project, you're you're kind of going wide a little bit. You're looking for making sure you've got the right problems. So if you kind of explore some like slightly adjacent to what you were talking about stuff that can help, right? Because either you go, oh no, this is not relevant, or you go, oh, there's something there I can kind of dig further into on that. Um, so yeah, I thought that your questions digging deeper with Austin were good, especially because he just came back from parental leave. That's like a unique situation. Um, yeah, I think it is also interesting to get the perspective of two designers who you've talked to so far. I don't think designers are necessarily the most typical user, but they have, I think, pretty similar needs to a developer, right? Like they're someone who's being tasked to do something with this information and like learn what's going on with it. So I'll be interested to see what kinds of people with how how does English work? I'll be interested to see what sorts of roles the other people you're able to speak to have. Um, but yeah, I didn't think that you like went off on useless tangents or anything with him. If that's what you're concerned about.
Yeah, and I think we have one lined up for tomorrow morning. So hopefully that'll be a new point of view.
Is that with another designer or is that a different role?
I'm not sure. But his name is Sheldon Led.
That's a name I recognize. That's a engineer, I think.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. That is he's a front end engineer somewhere. He's on our front end maintainer team. He has approved and merge requests of mine. So that's where I know the name from. Cool. Yeah. Dasha, speaking of research participants, would you mind leaning on your team too?
Yeah, actually, as we were speaking, I realized I left the Calendly link in our meeting notes, which most people don't revisit. So I'm going to ping them again on the Slack channel. I think sometimes if it's not there. But on that same note, and maybe we can talk about this towards the end, is I did chat with one of my engineers who would be really interested in taking a look at the final project. He also happens to be a college professor, so I think he has a good medium of giving feedback that's part GitLab and part to students. So what is the timeline that we're looking at to get that feedback? Because he's also going to have finals and his conflict was grading. So
I think we talked earlier about like planning to finish a bit early, like a week early, so that we have 1 week at the end for handoffs. But um, I don't know how like that's gonna plan out. So maybe um like around April, like towards the end, if that's possible. I think that, and like at that point, I think we're gonna be like doing our second round of user testing, so we could also get like feedback from that as well.
okay. Let me so we're looking at end of April. Okay, let me tell him end of April, and I know that already aligns with his schedule, but I think having a date would be really nice so that we can just like schedule it ahead of time and
Hmm.
then he knows where to be.
If he's also interested, he's like welcome to come to our final capstone presentation too. I'm sure that's not a problem for him to join on Zoom.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna I'm gonna organize. Gina did this last year. Maybe you've done this every year that this has happened. I'm not sure, but last year at least Gina organized a like internal GitLab presentation that we opened up to anyone who wanted to join from the company for those students to do like a dry run. I would like to do that again this year with you. So we could invite him to that. Um, and for your planning purposes, Moya, I think that you all probably don't have to be like fully done in order to do this exercise with an engineer. I think as long as you have like you because like by the last week of April, you'll have a design, you'll have a prototype, even if you're like still planning on making some tweaks to the final one you present to Linda, having something that you can have that conversation with him about like feasibility and how you break it down and stuff will be enough. So you
Hmm.
should have something you can use for it, even if it's not your final thing by the last week of April.
Hmm. Yeah.
And also, by the way, I let Linda know that we were planning on doing something like that. She was very excited about that. Um, so yeah, I mean, we don't there's not a ton of other stuff on the agenda. What's on your mind for this week? Do you have any questions for us? Anything that we can help you out with between now and Wednesday, or especially I think between now and Monday when you've got a deliverable due? I want to make sure we're making the most of this time together, but we don't have a ton of other discrete items on the list.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something. So, um, we like talked the four of us, and we weren't sure if we should start like kind of analyzing the interviews we had, or like wait until we have like a couple more and then like do like the analysis like with more like interviews. Yeah, like we're not sure like when we should actually like start the analysis.
I mean, since you have one tomorrow, you could probably wait until after that one. But if you didn't have another one until like Friday or something, it probably wouldn't hurt. I think it's just a matter of your time, because like it's a little bit of repeat work, but it's also a little bit of like, like sort of mise en place to prepare yourself in advance as well. Because Yeah, I think it depends a lot. But in this situation, I don't think it'd be bad if like today you wanted to kind of try to do some analysis of the two you've done and then kind of add to that and kind of see how a third one impacts it after you've done that interview tomorrow. But if you wanted to wait until after that and then think about all three at once, it's probably also not a big deal. It's just a matter of like what makes the most sense for you with your schedule. Like, I don't think from a practice point of view, there's like a clear right or wrong between those. It's basically like you're gonna have two sessions or you're gonna have one session. So like, how important is that to you?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, like the analysis on Dovetail is kind of confusing. So if you guys have any like insight into how you guys have done it in the past, that would be helpful.
I did see that in your dovetail you highlighted some key things. That's good. I would recommend also going through and trying to do some tagging um to try to like
Yeah.
put together like sort of a sizzle reel of like, you know, sort of like aha moments maybe that you identify from them. Um
I remember last time, I think Gina shared or Sunjung shared her screen of like the dovetail, and we tried to do that, but I don't think we can. Like,
oh,
we
maybe
can't
custom.
like add new tags, but we can have like the existing tags and like categorize them. I think that's like what happened to us.
You can't add new tags, or you can.
We can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
But there's
existing
already like existing tags like
There.
negatives, positives. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if I'm not super familiar with what Dovetail's like subscription levels are. Mm, maybe the free one you're not able to.
Or maybe like is there other ways you guys like tackle like the analysis on Dovetail?
Um, on Dovetail, I usually rely on the tags. I'm not gonna lie. Um, you could alternatively use something like, I know we discussed last time, something like Miro or FigJam that you could collaborate all together with in a board. If there's restrictions on using tags, maybe that would be easier for you to do. I'll look into the tag thing to see what subscription is needed. But one other thing I was going to recommend is the for analyzing the sessions. Sometimes, well, actually, I'm curious. Through the two sessions that you've run so far, have you thought about? Have you seen any trends that happened across both of those already?
In terms of like managing issues, I think both uses like external platforms to kind of like manage and track their like ongoing issues. I think that was a like really like st what stood out to me because Alyssa used like spreadsheets and then Austin used like Trello, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And but in terms of like the issues, I think like a lot like they would scroll a lot and then like find like specific names to like read the comments from, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, Alyssa mentioned that, right? That she's basically just going to look for comments by her PM to see and like
Yeah.
prioritize whatever he said.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think those types of things I think are really good because you were asking, should we analyze now, even though we've only had two sessions? I think that is analysis, kind of like highlighting the trends that you're seeing across your sessions. And then, um, like Chad said, as you continue doing more, you can build on that. But it is, I think you're going to see without even having to go in and rewatch the recordings, you're going to like pick out some of the things that are consistent over the sessions just based on the notes and what you remember. I guess yeah, yep, that's it.
On the tags in Dovetail, Moya, you are the admin on your Dovetail instance. So I think if any of us who have access to it can do stuff with tags, it might be you. I just went and like poked around in settings and stuff. I didn't see anything I'm allowed to access, but I'm just like a regular contributor level. Um, so yeah, I don't know if maybe the tags that you can have at the free tier are limited or something. Um, the set of them that exist are kind of surprising if that's what they are. They almost, I don't know, it almost seems like the tags that are there are like auto-generated from sentiment analysis of what they were saying or something. I'm not really sure. I can take this as a takeaway to like figure out what the deal is.
I guess like the like tag for like key insights and like frustrations did help though, because there were a lot that like were like key findings, and we like did highlight them from the two interviews that we had.
Mhm.
Also, on that note, like, should we categorize them into like the bigger um tag or more specific tag? You know what I mean?
I mean, whatever makes it useful for you to have clear takeaways from it, basically, like the structure, the tools that are there for, tagging and highlighting and whatever, those are there to help you to organize your thoughts. So, the goal, right, is to get out of those interviews clear evidence for like this is a problem that is worth solving, right? Um, so don't get too caught up in like, oh, like should it be this tag or that tag, should this be like a nested tag or whatever, like it doesn't really matter. The no one but you will see that or care about it. It's just for your own organizational purposes as a team. So I would go with whatever takes the least effort to get you findings.
The Figma that you created, I'm just looking at it right now. Is that a space for brainstorming based on what you've heard so far, or are you trying to organize the insights of the data that you heard?
Just brainstorming.
Like brainstorming solutions based on the
Yeah.
two interviews.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Because I was thinking one thing you could do, you've already kind of like organize them according to like a larger category and then scope down from there. Those probably tie back to insights that you heard from the interviews. You could just continue to use Figma from there. I found it helpful in the past to describe the problem that the user is facing and then connects that directly to what the brainstorming solutions are so that people like kind of understand the story a little bit better. Um, and I think you already have a really good format for that. So that could be an option instead of trying to do everything in Dovetail.
For
Um,
those of you who were, sorry, for those of you
no, you're
who
fine.
were not running the interviews, what were your takeaways? I'm not sure if you were like on note-taking duty, or if you were just kind of like there to watch or not ask any questions if anything came up, but how was that for you?
For me, I thought it was kind of like hard to like catch up with at first, because like it didn't go in the order we expected, but we kind of trying to like deviate to kind of get all the information we need. So that's one thought I had when I was note taking. And then for Alyssa, I had like a kind of like a follow-up question at the end, because I think she talked about like checking like how she read the issues, and like I just wanted to know like what specifically out of like the issue board that stood out to her or was like a priority to her. So that was one of the like main questions I had. I think like just from listening, I had like a lot of thought like in my mind. So I wanted to follow that up as well. But I think like Emily touched on everything that was on the sheet. It was just in like the order we did not expect, and like we had to like follow through to like kind of write the notes in the right places. But it went really well.
Yeah, I agree. I was on note tech for the second interview with Austin, and I think it was kind of hard, like watching him going through the issue part while at the same time not taking. And while also like at the same time synthesizing all the things that he said because he was talking kind of fast. So my note was like all over the place. But I think like Emily did a really good job in like moderating the um conversation so that it flowed really well.
Cool. Yeah, just so you know, I would say that that is in my experience a very typical way that it goes is that you've got an interview script and you definitely are you're gonna hit the important things, but you're not gonna go in order just because it's gonna be a conversation. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. Who knows where technology will lead us in this career path, but like at least in the short term, prepare for that to be kind of the way it goes when you're a note taker. However, recording the interviews means that there's not so much pressure to catch everything in the notes, like I think it's okay if you just have like kind of like distilled important stuff in the notes and then you can always refer back to the recording. I did think that Dovetail's transcription was not very good. It was kind of funny to read along and see what it thought you all were saying versus what you were actually saying. I feel like there was one point where it thought one of you said like Pikachu or Kazam or something like it. Like, I don't remember. It's just a so the transcription is not necessarily you can rely on, but you got the video, so don't put too much pressure on yourself when you're note taking. Try to just like if there's something that seems really important to you, they're like, oh, gotta write that down, write it down. But you don't have to do like a court stenographer word for word kind of anything like that.
Yeah, the way that we did it was so for note taking, it would just simply just like be a reference for the moderator, or Emily to like reference back when she was moderating so that she would catch on like the things that the interviewees were talking about. So it was not like necessarily all the ideas that they talk about that I note down, but just like the main ideas so that the conversation could flow better.
Mhm. Oh, were you like calling out in the notes like that's interesting, ask more about that or anything like that? Like a little bit of like behind the scenes directing kind of thing, or
Just like the main ideas so that Emily could reference back.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I found it, since it was kind of like a lot of new information, I found it helpful to just like quickly skim as they were speaking, trying to see if like we could relate it back to anything that they had previously mentioned. But honestly, the calling out, I think, or the kind of behind the scenes note, I think would be interesting to implement. Um, just because that way, like how Moya had a question at the end too, we can like ask it too in the middle of the conversation because I know for sure like even Moya's question I was like oh that wasn't on my mind, so like it was definitely good to have somebody else who wasn't doing like the front load work of trying to like keep the conversation going.
Mhm. Mhm. Anything in this next interview and in the interviews you're going to do later that you want to do differently based on how these two went?
Like me,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if because we have this script obviously, and like I don't know if we want to modify it so that we only have the questions that are important, but also I'm like, well, we don't know where the conversation is going to go, so like having all those points are, I guess, like helpful. Um, but I mean, I don't know if we wanted to like modify the script at all or just keep it and see where it takes us.
Well, is there anything that came up in those conversations that you didn't have in the script, but you're like, oh, we should like maybe add that? That's not a leading question. There's not like a thing I have in mind. I'm just curious.
No,
Because
yeah.
it's okay to do. You don't have to be like, oh, we didn't ask that question to those people, so we can't ask it moving forward, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
That's true. I think I'll pull up the screen right now and see if there was something.
But
That
you
is a
don't
good
necessarily
question.
have to answer right now, but bear
Yeah.
it in mind, like try to, especially in this first round of interviews, you're trying to like iterate towards like, aha, we're onto a problem, which can include changes to your interview script as you go. If there are questions that you like haven't really found are that useful, you could maybe deprioritize them, ask them if you've got time. If there's something that came up that you didn't have in the script, but you're like, actually, that's really interesting. Let's ask that again in the future. It's okay to add that in. Like, just kind of putting that out there that you don't have to be like, oh, that's the script. We can't deviate at all from it, especially in this. I think when you're doing usability testing of a prototype later, you probably do want to kind of stick to the script because you're testing against a fixed thing. But right now you're kind of exploring. So if there are kind of different questions you want to ask to kind of narrow down on something, it's okay to be a little looser.
Hmm. No, that does make sense because I also did earlier want to bring up kind or like open up a different like topic brainstorm from our we started like the competitor analysis in terms of like all the different tools that people use. And one thing that we were talking about on Monday was that kind of like the realization that, oh, well, we're not necessarily like going to be creating a whole new like project manager tool, because it's like, or if it's like it already exists, like we're not going to be creating that, which like I know for me that was like sort of like unconsciously back up like where I was working with, or like, oh, we're gonna take like different aspects of all these tools and then like create something new. But Maya did bring up the point like, oh no, well, like we're not creating, a specific like project management tool. So, and then like basically from our very like our initial phase of the competitor analysis, I feel like my insight from that was that a lot or like the drawback to the tools is that they don't help with multitask projects too much. And so I was like, theoretically, that could be an idea that we could hone in on. But then also, I was thinking, like, if that's not necessarily an issue for users, the fact that their current tools don't help with like big projects, we wouldn't want to like dive into that. But I guess like step number one would be like identifying if that's an issue for them. Um, but also I was like, I don't know, my mind is very much like, oh, how much do we go into something versus not? And so I don't know, I guess like that's kind of like generally where our minds were at, or at least like my mind was at with looking at the external tools. And I don't know, I was wondering like, oh, what do you guys garner from like those thoughts and stuff?
Yeah, I do think that like the kinds of things people put on their portfolio or on Dribble or something are usually like, I made a new thing from scratch kind of thing. But the kind of work you do in the real world usually is this exists already, and I need to add some new user value or something by like changing it, ameliorating it. That's harder to do, and I think it's probably good for you to have experience in doing that through a project like this before you go out in the real world and have to do it. And you're like, oh, I don't know. I've only ever like done something from zero before. Um, so I'm glad that that's where your mind is at with it, and that you're not just like, we're gonna make a totally new page that does this. So I would lean into that. I would try to think about like, and I think the questions you ask in the interview get towards this, right? You're not asking them like, well, if there were some page that did this for you, what would it be like or whatever. You're not asking questions like that. You're asking them about what they do now and how that works well for them and where it falls short. And I think that's going to lead you to the places where there are opportunities for making changes to this stuff. Um,
I have one other thing to add, which I feel like Emily, you were kind of getting at, was that based on the competitive analysis, you were kind of starting to solutionize different or come up with solutions of different drawbacks that you're seeing across the tools. But I would just be careful of coming up with those solutions too early because, like you said, you're not even sure if that's going to be an issue that is brought up during your research. I would really focus on first just validating that there is a problem that people are having, which like we kind of know, but just like validating what the problem is and then going from there. There's been so many times for me and across, I mean, I think everybody does this, where you have an assumption that there's a problem that exists, but you haven't really validated it thoroughly. And then the solution that you come up with might not actually solve the problem because you haven't like validated the initial problem. So yeah, I would consider just focusing mostly on validating the problem first.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
I don't think we have much else. I do wanna put out there, Moya and Dasha, the two of you should coordinate to try to figure out like a PM shadow thing. I'll leave that up to you. Thinking back on things that the four of you said you want to, improve skills around. Where is that in my notes? That's 2 weeks ago. No, that's 1 week ago. Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding this. Scrolling back in the notes. Where is that? Is it February 12th? Yes. So prototype stuff, we're not there yet. Project management stuff, we just talked about a little bit. Obviously, you're in it with the, user research stuff, at least for, initial interviews. And then Figma stuff, we're not there yet. So, I guess we'll touch on some of that stuff soon-ish. I think were you planning on, I think you were planning on kind of trying to wrap up your research before your spring break and then doing kind of like the design part of it after that. So that would be like after, mid-March when you're starting to like dig in and like, figure out how to use our design system and all that kind of stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about your project timeline overall? I guess we're like a month in.
I think the research took longer than we expected. I think just like the preparation in general, like getting the screener and like script and everything took longer than we expected. So I wouldn't say we are behind, but we might have to like kind of wrap the research up like pretty quickly before we start like ideation, like prototyping.
Yeah, the prep for research always takes longer than you think it will. Especially the part where you're recruiting, right? Because you can't directly control that. But I think for your part of the project, Moya, that's an interesting thing for you to note down for like, whatever, for your like final analysis of like, oh, we had planned this much time, but actually it took this much time and whatever, like learnings about that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to keep you all too long. I don't, if we don't have other stuff, we don't have to just like, hang out for another 20 minutes just because it's on the calendar. I'm sure you've got a lot of other homework for other classes to go do. So
And Gina, just so you know that the schooner should be ready now.
Okay, great. I left a comment to the recruitment issue. So hopefully that will get started today. And then there's going to be a lot of back and forth between, I think he is just going to reach out to you all directly through our channel in Slack. But just to give you an idea of what that's going to look like, she's going to have a list of all of the participants that qualify for your screener. And then you're going to be able to hand pick which ones you want to talk to based on their names. I think she's going to share those out in a spreadsheet just so you can know what to expect.
Okay, perfect. And then would the names be like rolling basis or just a final spreadsheet with all the names?
Probably going to be rolling in, but yeah, probably within like by Friday, maybe she'll cut it off. So you have the ability to say, we have enough participants to pick from, and then she'll just shut the rally project off, which is how people keep responding. And then another thing is I'm going to send you a example of what the email would look like, the email participant to sign up. I think that's how this is going to go, unless Kate is able to just automatically do that, which I don't know. I'll send you an email, and then you can just see what the template would look like if you wanted to reach out to a user, like what types of things we say when we do that.
Gotcha. So we would pick users we're interested in talking with. Tell what's her name again?
Kate,
Tell Kate, and then we would send out the email with the Calendly link in it.
I believe so. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
And then we can just check in async, and I can always hop on a call with anybody if you need help.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Okay. Well, good luck with the interview and with the analysis. Please feel free between now and Monday to share what you got with us in the Slack channel, and we'll give you some feedback, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.